Vladimir Putin says he's ready to extend the treaty between Washington and Moscow that limits each country's nuclear arsenal. The New START treaty curtails the number of nuclear missiles deployed by both the US and Russia, but is set to expire this week. So will it run out or be renewed? Maria Rost Rublee is a professor of international relations at the University of Melbourne, and she joins me now. Maria, good to have you with us today. Firstly, can you explain to us what is the New START treaty and why is it lapsing?
Yes, absolutely. The New START was signed in 2010 between Obama and Medvedev. Essentially, it puts into place numerical limitations on warheads, missiles, nuclear-capable bombers, but it also includes detailed transparency and verification mechanisms, such as on-site inspections, data exchanges, notifications, and more. So it was really important to essentially increase transparency so that when normal military activities were happening in the US or Russia, they wouldn't be misinterpreted as preparations for nuclear war. But it only had a lifetime of 10 years with one 5-year extension, and that's where we're at.
So in theory, what could happen after the 5th of February? That's in about 2 days when this treaty lapses.
Yes. Well, look, Putin has offered for both countries to voluntarily adhere to those numerical limits for 1 year. And then Russian diplomats have said, actually, we could do it for more than 1 year. Trump has said, it sounds like a good idea, but there's been no formal response from the U.S. And so unless the U.S. comes out in the next day or two, it's going to expire. And then we're going to end up with, for the first time in more than 50 years, no legally binding limits on U.S. and Russian strategic nuclear forces. That's a really bad thing.
Yes, and then some analysts have also pointed out that this could accelerate a global arms race. Is that a possibility in your view?
Yeah, it's really a problem. First of all, once you're no longer bound by those limits, it takes time, for example, to manufacture new warheads, but both countries have warheads that are non-deployed, and they can put them onto existing missiles. And so we could see stocks increase of the nuclear missiles that are deployed within months to 2 years. But the bigger thing, it's not just about the numbers, it's about instability. Because without New START, strategic planning on both sides is more likely to be driven by uncertainty and worst case assessments. And that means that, essentially, a negative security spiral where you're not sure what's happening, and you might even feel like there's pressure to launch if a conflict starts, because you don't know what the other side has, you don't have those verification measures, and you don't have the transparency mechanisms in place anymore.
Yes, and I'm wondering, you've got this treaty, and how does it sit alongside the nuclear non-proliferation treaty, of which both Russia and the US are parties to?
Yes, so the NPT, essentially, the US and Russia are both nuclear weapon states, and as part of that, they have promised to work in good faith on nuclear disarmament. Now, arms control is not disarmament, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. And so even though they're not technically connected, and New START lapsing doesn't affect either country's membership or adherence to the NPT, what it is going to do is make the upcoming review conference for the NPT much more difficult, because countries without nuclear weapons are going to come into this review conference saying, look, you promised to work on disarmament. We've adhered to our promise not to develop nuclear weapons. You not only are you not working on disarmament, you've gotten rid of the only arms control treaty left.
And I do wonder how then would a country like Ukraine be interpreting what is happening, given that Ukraine and Russia are still at war?
Yes, look, Ukraine is actually part of the issue with New START, because to have a legally binding treaty like New START, you need good political relationships. You need some trust. And so Ukraine has been a big part of the breakdown in the trust between the U.S. and Russia. Of course, Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine, and then, what Putin has characterized as Western meddling led by the U.S. in what he sees as a domestic issue. So some people say until Ukraine is solved, we're not going to see any real movement on another arms control treaty, and that could be years.
And also, Donald Trump says he wants to negotiate any future nuclear arms control agreements to include China. What is the U.S. president trying to achieve here?
Yes, essentially, I mean, one of the things Trump has said is that he can get a better deal with Putin. You know, let's not do New START, let's do something new, and he'll get a better deal, and he's going to include China. And the problem is that China has unilaterally said they're not going to participate in any arms control agreements. And they say because both the US and Russia, they both have more than 5,000 nuclear warheads, whereas China has around 600 today. And so they've said, you know, until you get closer to our number or we get closer to yours, it's not fair to ask us to limit when you're so much higher. And so whether you agree with that or not, the fact is that China is not going to participate. There's no way, you know, politically or diplomatically that's going to happen. And so Trump saying that essentially means that if he sticks to that, there's not going to be any new arms control agreements.
Okay, Maria, Rost, Rublee, really appreciate you giving your insights on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.